Alam ko naman dito lang kita makikita! Ngayon, wala ka nang kawala!
This is what we call blood spatter. Blood spatter or blood stain pattern interpretation is a technique that seeks to piece together the events that cause bleeding. Knowing how the blood got on the wall or surface can be helpful in determining if a crime was committed and if the blood in evidence is that crime. Blood spatter or blood stains created by the application of the force to the area where the blood originated. Origin or source, place where the spatter came from. Angle of impact, angle at which droplets strikes at the surface. Parent drop, the main droplet from which satellite spatter originates. This is what we call satellite spatters. Small drops of blood that break off the parent spatter which the droplet hits a surface. This is what we call spines. Spines, pointed edges of a stain that radiate out from the spatter which help determine the direction from which the spatter blood traveled.
The recognition and analysis of blood stain patterns can yield useful investigate information. The general rule of the blood stain pattern analysis in a criminal investigation is to assist in the reconstruction of those events of an alleged incident that could have created the stain and the stain patterns present at the crime scene, on items of physical evidence recovered from the crime scene, and on items of clothing that were present at the crime scene. In some cases, it may be necessary to conduct a blood stain pattern interpretation using photographs. The usefulness of individual blood stain and blood stain patterns lies in them retention of information descriptive of the possible events that could have produced them. The sizes of individual stain composing a pattern, the shapes of this stain, and their distribution relative to one another can be utilized for the purposes of determining how a particular stain or pattern may have been produced. Blood stain pattern analysis evaluation are conducted to determine what actions or sequence of action could have created the blood stain or patterns observed. Information that may be gained with blood stain pattern analysis include the position of the individual when the blood was deposited, such as sitting or standing, the relative position of individuals at the time of bloodshed, the possible type of weapon used, as well as possible mechanism that could have produced the blood staining on a surface.
In reconstruction of events, it is important to study the sizes of stains, its pattern, the shapes of these stains, and their distribution. It is because it is relative to one another. It can be utilized for the purposes of determining how a particular stain or pattern may have been produced. Types of blood stain patterns. There are three types of blood stain patterns. First is passive. Second, projected. Third is transfer or contact. Passive bloodstain patterns. It is created from the force of gravity. Examples are drops, pulls, and flow patterns. Projected bloodstain patterns occur when force is applied to the source of the blood. Transfer or contact bloodstain patterns created when a wet, bloody object comes in contact with a target surface. Droplets. It means circular drops that vary depending on surface. If smooth surface, it forms round drops. And when it's rough, it forms like satellites and spikes. Pulse. Victim remains in one place while bleeding heavily.
Blood drops. As blood trickles downward, a single drop will break free. Surface tension pulls the drop in vertically and horizontally. Shape settles into a spear until impact. Drop shape depends mostly on the nature of the target surface.